His is the biggest name in Indian theatre. Actors like Nasiruddin Shah, Om Puri and Anupam Kher consider him the next best thing to God. But what is he actually like? Well, let's see if we find out as I introduce you to the legendary Ebrahim Alkazi. Did I get the name right?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
You're best known for the incredible work you did revitalizing the National School of Drama and the plays that you staged there. But is that the achievement you'd like to be remembered by?
I think so. It's largely the work that I did for theatre as a whole, not only at the National School of Drama, though the work that I did at the National School of Drama was on a much larger scale than that what I was able to achieve in Bombay. But I think that you have to take the totality of a man's career. And I don't think it was only in the field of theatre that I did a considerable amount of work. It was also in the field of contemporary art.
You know, you said of the National School, the school has done more for the cultural and emotional integration of the country than any other single body. Now, is that a parent fondly exaggerating, or did you really mean it?
No, well, I meant it certainly, otherwise I wouldn't have said it. But on the other hand, after all, here you are, you get young people, boys and girls from all over the country coming to an institution which has been looked down upon. Their parents frown upon their wanting to go into the theatre. They think it's merely a matter of, dancing and cavorting, etc., etc.
This is bourgeois middle class taste.
Yes, indeed. Well, it's a Nachna Gana kind of attitude that they have to the theatre. And you realize that they've come from such a variety of backgrounds to meld them into something that could participate in the program of a national institution. What makes the National School of Drama truly national? And then what then are the tremendous responsibilities that fall on your shoulder within a period of 3 years to make them people who are not only reveal their own talent but are able to lead others in their respective regions.
But the amazing thing is that when you were first offered the directorship way back in 1962, you weren't very keen to take it on. You were almost fighting shy of it, in fact.
Well, no. The thing is, I was offered the job in 1954 because I had prepared a scheme for the National School of Drama.
So 8 years before you got it, you were offered it as well?
Yes, I was. I was offered it before that because I had conceived the scheme for the National School of Drama in 1954 when Ashfaq Hussain, who was the secretary in the Ministry of Education, asked me to do that. And he offered me the job, but you don't take a job that you yourself have, sort of worked out.
It felt improper?
No, it's not. It was not a question of propriety. I was not ready for the job.
Too young?
I was too young. I didn't have the administrative experience and so on. And so while you can conceive of a thing, how to carry it out, and particularly in terms of the bureaucracy that obtains in Delhi, that's a different matter altogether.
But interestingly, even in 62, when you were 8 years older, you didn't jump at it. You took a couple of months at least, if not a whole year, to make up your mind.
No, I didn't take a year to do that. Look, after all, there's a matter of loyalties. I'd worked in Bombay from the 1940, late 40s onwards. I had a tremendous following in Bombay, both the people actually participating in my productions as well as with the public. The question was, here is such a tremendous amount of support and enthusiasm which has been generated for you and as a result of your work. Are you going to ditch them? Are you really going to turn your back on them? Are you going to walk out on them?
So you couldn't
merely
tear
because you
yourself
wanted
away?
to pursue? I couldn't. It was difficult for me to tear myself away. Besides, my task in Bombay had not been completed.
There was also something else. The NSD itself was in a very shabby, if not decrepit and run-down condition. I gather when you actually started, you virtually had to clean the loos.
I do that in any case. I do that in any case. I clean the loos at home. I had to clean the loos in another sort of home that I walked into. And I think that's very important.
But there was
No, I think it's part of your culture. It's extremely important. That is also, incidentally, what Homi Bhabha did.
He cleaned the loos of the atomic center?
No, he saw to it that they were clean. You see, he saw to it that they were clean.
But in this case, you were virtually photographed by the Times of India when they came to interview you.
I was not abashed by that because I think that there's a certain ground roots element in theatre. There's a certain sort of rootedness and earthiness in the work that you do. And unless your inspiration and unless your concept of work in the theatre starts from there, I don't think that you can create fine work. You can't. You have to create an atmosphere. You have to work within salubrious surroundings and surroundings which are helpful to your creative imagination and for the people who are participating in it.
But you know, it's amazing. You may have begun by cleaning the loos, but it didn't take you very long to change the whole place because your first play, Ashad Ka Ek Din, was a roaring success. Looking back now, 40 odd years later. Why do you think it clicked so instantly?
Because it was different. It was different from the type of Hindi theatre that prevailed.
What sort of theatre prevailed?
Well, it was, unfortunately, people always look down on their audiences and they think that they need to play down to their audiences. Nothing of the kind at all. They have to improve their own standards. They have to pick good plays. They've got to do them in a highly professional manner and with a considerable degree of intelligence, etc. Communicate them to their audiences. They've got to build up audiences. So the theatre is not merely something that takes place on the stage. It is a communication between the players on the stage and the audience, and they're working together as participants in a larger community of a city and of the nation as a whole.
But it also sounds as if you actually took the theatre audience in the capital completely by surprise. You stunned them by showing them theatre of a sort they'd never seen before.
Well, I think that I had certain advantages, quite frankly. I had the advantage of having done my work in Bombay. I had the advantage then of having been, what shall I say, having achieved a certain degree of professionalism in stage design, say, for example. In my wife, a brilliant costume designer, say, and in lighting, etc. All those are elements that went into the success of that rather lyrical, subdued, low-key production of a very sensitive script, Ashar Ka Ek Din, which seemed to be dealing with the life of Kalidas, but was ostensibly, but was in reality, I realized, an autobiographical piece by Mohan Rakesh.
Now, shortly thereafter, you moved the National Theatre to the place where it is today, Rabindra Bhavan, and people who were with you at the time say they realized that you were more than just a theatre director. It's apparently the case that you virtually built the famous open-air studio with your own hands.
No, I did two things. I built, to begin with, a studio theatre, I broke down the wall, and can you imagine doing that to a CPWD building in this country?
Did the government object?
No, because I had Habib Rahman, the architect, who was with me, and he agreed. And so there was nothing that the government could do about it.
This was the famous theatre on the third floor?
On the third floor at Rabindra Bhavan. It's a small studio theatre for intimate performances, so that the actor's performance could be almost looked at microscopically, So when you're at this kind of a distance from the actor, there's nothing that the actor can do to simulate emotions and the rest of it. He has to be absolutely within the role.
And then came the famous open air one.
And then we built it all with our own hands. And you had all the people, the entire population of Rabindra Bhavan at all the windows, watching the director of the National School of Drama with a tasla and so on his head, carrying, earth from one part of the thing to the other, and putting up the theatre,
in fact,
erecting the theatre.
They tell a lovely story about how you were particularly keen about the chairs. Apparently you designed them and they cost a phenomenal 34 rupees.
They were chairs that we designed, yes. They were designed and executed in the workshop. And this is just to show you our craftsmen are absolutely brilliant. And then in 1964, to be able to turn out chairs which cost you 34 rupees each, and which are absolutely in pristine condition, I'd invite you to go and see them yourself. It's incredible.
Why was it so important for you to do all this? Was this something that you believed would give the theatre the imprint and shape you wanted? Or was it simply that no one else would come and help?
No, this is a totality. The whole thing holds together. Everything holds together. It's not merely the performance on the stage. It's not merely the setting and so on. It's the very approach of the people into a theatre. It's the manner in which they're treated, the manner in which they're greeted at the box office, the courtesy and so on with which they're shown to their seats, the atmosphere which is generated in the auditorium.
And you were determined to control the whole thing.
Yes, indeed, you have to. You have to do it.
Now, something else that you began, which at the time was quite novel, but today seems natural, is you began staging plays with Delhi's magnificent historical monuments as backdrops. When you did it the first time, how did Delhi react to this idea?
Well, I think it took them by surprise. It took them by surprise. I was able to do it, first of all, because I used all the students in the National School of Drama, all the 75 students then in the National School of Drama. Therefore, it was a large cast. It was a magnificent play, Andha Yug, by Dharamveer Bharati, regarded only as a radio script. And then I showed it, presented its stage worthiness. It was against the magnificent battlements of Feroz Shah Kotla. And as it happened, just by chance, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru came to see it. And along with him into were the doyens of the diplomatic corps and all the hoi polloi, etc., all the politicians and the rest. And so It worked. It worked. It was a tremendous success. Also, it was a theme from the Mahabharata which captured the popular imagination.
So the setting was absolutely perfect.
Indeed, it was not. The setting was absolutely magnificent. And you know, what can you create artificially to simulate those kind of surroundings? There's already the history there in the background.
You know, your students say that the most important thing about studying under Ebrahim Alkazi was his attitude to teaching. There's a story they tell that I'd love you to confirm. They say that you once said to them, if a class is boring, you have my permission to walk out.
Indeed, I did that, yes, absolutely. Absolutely, because I wanted to improve the standard of the staff as a whole.
But weren't you scared that you might undermine the teaching profession itself?
No, on the contrary, they had to rise to the occasion, they had to rise to these responsibilities, they had to rise to these challenges. And that is what is so remarkable in the theatre, that the theatre is always new, the theatre is always contemporary, the theatre is always leading you into the future. And therefore you have to carry the whole thing with you.
Was that the secret, that you inspired people by setting challenges that they had to rise up to attain?
I had to impose challenges on myself. There were challenges to which I had to rise on the personal level, dealing with the personal problems of students, their personal psychological problems, their emotional problems. After all, they came to me at an impressionable age. They came from varied backgrounds. Some of them were peasants. Most of them were people who had been rejected by their own society, rejected by their own families, coming to the National School of Drama against the wishes of their parents.
So you weren't just teaching them to be actors, you were virtually giving them back the confidence they'd lost.
It was necessary to build a national movement, and it was necessary to do that from scratch, a movement which started with the mind, with the emotion, with the intellect, with the imagination, and with the understanding that a tremendous responsibility devolves on you in the theatre.
So today then, when you look at actors like Nasiruddin Shah, Anupam Kher, Om Puri, do you do it with a certain measure of proprietorial pride? Do you see the stamp of Alkazi on them?
No, I don't need people to show me the stamp of myself. I would be embarrassed by that, quite frankly. I'm very proud of the work that a person like Ratan Thiem does, which is nothing like what I did. I'm very proud of what a person in Assam like Dulal Roy did. I'm tremendously proud of what Prema Karanth did in Karnataka and so on. And I think my pride is in what they have been able to do on their own without my presence.
So your pride lies in giving them the confidence to find their own best and to be able to do it at their best.
To discover themselves and to share that with as large an audience as possible.
Tell me something, right at the very peak of your time at the NSD, you'd been there admittedly 15 years, but everyone said that you were going to be there forever and ever. You suddenly upped and left. What happened? Did you get bored? Did the challenge fade away? Or did you decide you wanted to leave at your prime and not watch yourself whittle down?
No, to begin with, I didn't want to shuffle out of my job. Too many people had come to me wanting extensions. Each time a person turned the age of 58, he'd knock at my door and come and plead with me, asking me for an extension. There was a human problem to begin with, but then on the other hand, there was the problem of revitalizing the institution. And my responsibility towards my students and to the art form, to which I was geared. At the same time, I wanted to get on and discover new things in myself. And for example,
challenges. You
yes,
needed
absolutely.
new challenges.
I needed them in the field of contemporary art. I grew up with the contemporary Indian artists, with Hussain, with Francis Newton Sousa, Tayyab Mehta, Akbar Padamsi, and so on.
So this is when you gave up being director and decided to promote Indian contemporary art in the West?
Indeed. That's what I did, yes.
Let's take a break. I want to come back in part 2 and talk not about the director, not about the promoter of paintings, but about the man himself, what you might in America call the real McCoy.
Okay.
We'll be back in a couple of moments. Stay tuned. Welcome back. My guest is the legendary Ebrahim Alkazi. Let's talk about you. Your father was Saudi, your mother Kuwaiti, yet you were born and brought up in Pune. What were your parents doing there?
Well, my father was a businessman in Bombay. He had his office in Bombay. And for health reasons of the family, to take them to a more salubrious climate, he settled them in Pune. And so he would commute every weekend between Bombay and Pune.
You had a large family of 8 brothers and sisters. What sort of childhood did that make for?
Absolutely fabulous, very, very rich. I mean, the most enjoyable part of one's life is, you know, recollecting one's memories of childhood. And we do that all the time as members of the family. I've lost, unfortunately, some of them in the course of the years. But it was fabulous. It was very rich. I think that my mother held the whole family together. She was a person who was open to so many experiences. She could speak Arabic, of course. She could speak Urdu, she could speak Marathi, she could speak Gujarati, even write those languages and so on.
You
And
once said
taught
that
them
she
this.
could curse in these languages, which is the real sign of fluency.
Absolutely, yes. And shows you the kind of vitality that she had, you know. She was larger than life.
She gave you an incredible education, which was both eclectic and comprehensive. Jesuit school by day and a classical Arabic education at home.
Yes, absolutely. I had no holidays.
None whatsoever.
None whatsoever, till the age of 16, right through the summer. You know, whenever there was a holiday in school, there was Arabic classes from morning to evening at home, and so on.
So in addition to all the other cultural influences, there was a Protestant ethic imbibed in you as well.
No, there was a Catholic in ethic from the Jesuit school in which I was. And there was a Catholic in the wider sense, etc., that I imbibed at home.
There was something else you used to do. I gather your favorite haunt as a child was to visit something called the International Book Depot in Pune.
It's fabulous. It is a part of my education. It is extraordinary, you know, how some of these, I can't really call them organizations, but here was a bookshop. It was like Shakespeare and Company, say, for example, in Paris, you know, during the 20s and the 30s when Joyce, etc., were there. Here it was absolutely incredible. Incidentally, I had to steal away from home because it was in Pune city, and Pune city was out of bounds for us. And when I went over there, I was regaled with a colossal sort of a cross-section of the finest in contemporary literature. Aldous Huxley, D.H. Lawrence, James Joyce. They were just writing at that time. This is something in the late 30s. You know, it is an incredible experience.
So as
and
you
in the
read-
background, there were all the great names in the background, meaning palpably in front of my eyes and in my hearing, there were all the great names in Marathi literature there in this bookshop, vociferously expressing their views and so on.
So with each visit to the bookshop, you were actually educating yourself.
Indeed, indeed. I always built up libraries. I have about 8 libraries in different parts of the world. I mean, I'm obsessed with books.
Now, it was when you went to St. Xavier's, Bombay, that your real talent, love, fascination for the theatre blossomed. What was there about the college that gave you this opportunity to become
More
yourself?
than the college, it was this man, Sultan Padamsi, who later was to be my brother-in-law. He was an incredible person. He was the closest to the idea of genius that I have ever come to in my life, and this has been the experience also of others. He combined the talents of an Orson Welles and the majesty and so on, and the presence of an Orson Welles with the authority and the largesse of a Diaghilev. He had these qualities of the impresario which were absolutely incredible and fantastic, and within a matter of 3 years in Bombay, he made the Indian theatre stand on its head. He did incredible productions long before Orson Welles came out with his Macbeth. The Macbeth of Sultan Padamsi was something absolutely incredible.
So, to use journalistic speak, behind the imprint of Alkazi, is there the imprint of Sultan Padamsi?
Unfortunately, it was too brief a spell, unfortunately. He died. He died within 3 years. He committed suicide, very sadly. And the burden of running the theatre group fell on me and fell on 2 other individuals, Derek Jeffries and Hamid Sayani. And incidentally, the 3 of us married 3 Padamsi sisters. So there you had also the family bond.
But the interesting thing is that when a couple of years later you left for England, it was actually not drama that you'd gone to study, but painting. You were going to the Royal College of Arts. How did you then end up at RADA?
Well, when I went, I really went to an institution called the Anglo-French Arts Center, because it said that people like Fernand Léger from Paris, people like Henri Matisse were going to teach at these institutions. A person like Jean Lorsa, who was a tapestry man, also would travel and teach, etc. over there. But unfortunately, the mood in all these institutions after World War II was completely different. It was far too relaxed. It was, it lacked the discipline. It lacked the hard work. I suppose the World War II had taken too much out of the British people.
So disillusionment with RCA took you to RADA?
I passed through Gower Street, and as I turned, I saw the Royal
Academy of Dramatic Arts.
the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts, and I said, "Oh my God, this is the Royal Academy!" And I walked up the steps, quite casually. And I said, do you think that I could join this institution? They said, well, you know, we've closed our auditions and interviews and so on. However, they went to Sir Kenneth Barnes, the principal, and they asked, here is this black boy from India and so on, would you consider him? And he gave me an interview a week later.
And you're in?
I was in, and he stood by me right through my 2.5 years at the Royal Academy.
You know, those weren't the easiest 2.5 years. You were never really with a lot of money to
No. We were impecunious. I lived with Nissim Ezekiel.
He lived might be a metaphor. You even had to share his bed in the innocent sense of the term.
It is a licit sense of the term. Yes, absolutely. Because these other sort of fashionable sort of tendencies didn't exist at that time, or they were just about to make themselves felt. And well, Nissim worked at the Indian High Commission, where Krishna Menon then was High Commissioner. And later on, Francis Newton Sousa joined us. And after that, my wife.
So you were a threesome.
That's
you,
right.
Sousa, and Nissim
Absolutely.
Ezekiel.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
How much of the Ebrahim Alkazi that the world acknowledged in the 60s, 70s, and 80s is a creation of these 2.5 years in London?
I learnt a great deal in London. I learnt a great deal about treating people who had a certain amount of creative imagination. To Sir Kenneth Barnes, for example. I mean, the latitude that he gave me. I wanted to be a director. I wanted to study direction. There was no direction course. He saw to it that I went to outside institutions and considered that to be part of my training at the Royal Academy. He supported me to the hilt. It was incredible, absolutely incredible. I had an exhibition at the Leicester Gallery. The Leicester Gallery, right in Leicester Square at that time, was famous because it had projected the work of people like Henry Moore and the rest of it. I was amazed at the turnout. I wrote to Henry Reed, to Herbert Reed, and he came to the opening. I wrote to Victor Passmore, and he came to the opening. And they supported me, and they helped me, and they encouraged me. I'd never had that kind of encouragement before or since in this country. I've never had it.
When you then took up the NSD many, many years later, to what extent were you trying to be what all these people had earlier been to you?
I felt it was very important for me to be able to recognize talent and to encourage it and to give it every support. And the support that you need to give people over here in this country is far more than monetary support. It's not the money that counts. It's to bring out the steel which is in them.
Do you think you've succeeded by and large?
I don't know, really. I think to a certain extent, I am proud of my students. I think that they've done me proud. But I think that the problems of this country are vast, are enormous. You know, under the shadow of what I'm speaking to you today. Where is my theatre? Where is my work in relation to what is happening to our country? That is something that I ask myself.
Ebrahim Alkazi, that's a question time alone can answer, but a pleasure getting to know you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.